Hello, hello, hello. Anais, how are you?
I am doing well. How are
You know
you?
what? Are you in my AirPods? I am having crazy technical difficulties because I picked this super, super, super cute little coffee shop to hang out with you. And I like couldn't connect to Wi-Fi and I'm
Oh
trying to get on video
no.
right now, but hold on, let me see if I can get us on video. I'm on video. Let me get you up here on video because I'm super excited for Business with
Yes.
Champions today. I can't wait.
Let me give it permission since this is my first time. Let's see,
All
let's
right. Oh, is this
see.
your first time speaking on Fireside?
This is like my first time, other than like the things that you've sent me. This is my first time on Fireside.
So look, I have to show you this cute little coffee shop. Can you see this fireplace behind me?
Yeah.
It's like
I'm trying to make you
it's
bigger. There we
very
go.
romantic. Oh
Are we
my
doing the fireplace?
gosh. Is everyone, guys, is this the energy that you needed in your Monday morning? I know it is. Anytime I see
Absolutely.
Anais, it's the energy I needed in my Monday morning. Okay, so I'm going to quickly tell everyone what we're doing with Business with Champions,
Yeah.
and then we can tell everyone how brilliant you are. And then I want to pull some
Yes.
people up on stage. I want to workshop. So Anais and I met in Marketing Monday on Clubhouse. And one of the things that was so special about that room was that business owners would come up on stage and ask their marketing questions. And we would workshop live, and it was so synergetic and it was so exciting. And I got to meet Anais, who's, brilliant, superhuman marketer. And so I wanted to start Business with Champions every Monday to do the same thing. I figured we'd chat about actually really useful tactical concepts that are going to help business owners move the needle forward, because that's what we're doing in Breakfast with Champions. We're trying to level up, and we'd pull up anyone on stage who wanted to come up. So Anais, tell everyone who you are and what you do and all that goodness. And I got this
Hello.
crazy
Good morning.
cappuccino because I said we'd be meeting for coffee. Can you see this?
Oh, I love it. I
This is actually
definitely
maybe going to be my thing because it's the second, because when I met with Donna, I had a cappuccino as large as my face as well. So I think this is just like part of the
I'm a
brand.
fan.
Now it's part of the brand.
Listen, it's been twice. You're committed at this point. So, yeah, I ended up actually making a matcha this morning. So, sorry, not uphold my side of
No, I
things, but
love
it's
it.
a
It's very
warm
West Coast of
drink.
you. It's very West Coast of you. So I love it. We're bringing more
Okay,
people
good.
in.
I love it. I love it. All right, cool. So, yeah, about me, my name is Anais Ganouna. I am an aligned marketing strategist. What that means is that I center a lot of my marketing practices on ethics and values and like human sustainability, which I mean, I feel like a lot of people don't consider when they're putting together their marketing plans, especially as first time business owners, especially when there's limited resources like time and money. So I do that. I primarily serve spirit led businesses, which I define as folks who have a calling in their heart that they are taking action on. And I do that through coaching programs, through consulting, fractional CMO, and then I have a whole other business, Nadia, with my business partner, Nadia Payan. Called Aligned Visionaries, which is a membership space where we essentially teach folks how to get into their bodies first and integrate and get to know themselves so that they can show up in business as a whole human.
That's
Nice.
amazing. So my first question for you, when you talk about
Mhm.
aligned marketing, like, is that something that people generally find like a foreign concept? Are they even aware
Yeah.
that there is an ethical way to market? Can you kind of share a little bit more about that?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So there's usually not an awareness around being able to market in an ethical way, especially in the United States. Like we have a lot of our traditional marketing is absolutely rooted in manipulation. And it's why a lot of people have this aversion to marketing themselves. Like you'll hear it all the time, like, oh, I don't want to feel slimy. I don't want to feel sleazy. I don't want to be pushing people into doing something. And it's because that's the marketing we've been served. We've seen marketing that's totally shifted our society into things like beauty standards and eating disorders and harmful practices. So a lot of times when people think about their marketing, they're thinking that there's only this one way to do it, which is to manipulate folks into buying what it is that they're serving. But if you look at marketing from an angle of first of all, that you have the capability and options to market from a place that is aligned with your values, that's coming from a place where you don't have to manipulate folks, you just get to inform them. It creates a lot more ease for people to step their toe in and then actually create a business that's sustainable and still be able to actually sell because you can't stay in business if you're not making money. That's unfortunately the reality of our day. No, I can't hear you. Are you still muted?
I'm muted. That's why, because I'm
I
busy. I'm like sharing it out. I'm like, get on in here and
know.
hear
I'm like,
Anais. And
I
so I
know you're
muted
giving me
myself while I was
so
like
much juice.
sharing and texting. I love that point that you just raised because people do think that you have to pick one. Like,
Hmm.
well, either I'm going to be a really good person or I'm going to make money. And sometimes I think that they think that down to their marketing too. They're like, but I want the most effective marketing. And I
Yeah.
love this idea that um, it is not true that being cognizant, being more ethical, what any of those things could be, would negatively impact your marketing. It's going to be the opposite. And it's not just going to be the opposite in the cases that I think we talk about all the time. Like when we think about a Dove Beauty campaign, or when we think about Tom shoes, when we think about kind of like any other space, but really holistically overall,
Yeah.
one of the things that you said in your first Breakfast with Champions segments that I'll never forget, when you were talking about practices that are almost misaligned, but we don't even notice it because it's so much a part
Hmm.
of our daily fabric. You were talking about when people put payment options out for their courses, and they
Yep.
tell people like, oh, if this is too much for you to pay at once, it's okay. Just pay,
Yeah.
4 installments of this, and it ends up being more. And you were like, but is that actually helping your client or customer who's in a space where they need a financial break? And I was like, why has no one said that to me before?
I mean, it's because again, we have these practices that we're taught, and marketing has been a one-way street for a really long time. Where the only times that we're thinking about fine-tuning marketing has been for the benefit of the business, has been for the benefit of making profits. And when we expand what our entrepreneurship can do to beyond just making money, where we can be of service, we can help we can help people, we can help planet, we can help profit as well, because again, you need profit, then you suddenly expand what you can do with your marketing. And pricing is a huge, it's a huge point where people get stuck on. And because I have a lot of clients who like their one of their core values is accessibility, specifically financial accessibility. And again, like you mentioned, they would have these pricing structures, these payment plans that were more expensive. So like to me, it was such a just it's such an obvious like mismatch in values and embodiment and action. So how can you say that you value financial accessibility while you know that it's more expensive to be poor than it is to be wealthy, right? Things cost more. You can't buy things in bulk. Like there's just more expenses involved. So when you're trying to serve that value, you can't feed into the system that is causing those problems.
I mean, I'm just taking a moment on it's more expensive to be poor than it is to be wealthy. And I
Yeah.
think it's so true. And I want to take a moment actually, because I could just geek out and interview you
Yeah.
all day, and that's what we're going to do here. But I also want to tell Debbie and Marwan, my dear friend Stephanie, our co-mod Amanda, my dear friend Kim, Gloria, Ida, Annette, anyone who's in the room, please raise your hands if you have a question to ask Anais or myself. We are both marketers, so we love chatting all things marketing. But again, I think one of the many things that I really find special about you is your approach. And that's why I'm kind of honing in
Mm.
on that today. So, another thing that I heard you say once on a Breakfast with Champions stage, when someone had asked you a marketing question, you'd given them an answer and you asked them, how does that feel in your body? And I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious for
Yeah.
you, honestly, I'm curious for you what it's like as a working woman, almost being so confident in
Mm.
answers that maybe we don't hear, quote unquote, in the corporate world, where you developed that confidence, and what that's like for you. And does it, again, is it expansive for you and your client base that you're so true to who you are? Do you ever get pushback? I'm curious.
So how I got there was the short answer is trauma. The longer answer is like I mean I had a difficult dynamic growing up in my family, and because of that I was forced very early to be an advocate for myself before I knew I had to be an advocate for myself. And also like I had to navigate a lot of systems. Like I'm a third culture kid. My mother was raised in one country, my father was raised in another, and I was raised in a third country that is the United States. So there was always this sense of not really belonging in any one place. And when you have that like internally part of your identity, you tend to try to find places where like you tend to negotiate the facts of life, right? And you question a lot of it because the fact of life in the US is very different than the fact of life in Tunisia, where my father's from, or even in France. So you tend to question a lot of status quo situations, which in my childhood, like when I was a very, very young kid, I used to throw tantrums when I didn't like how things were set up. Now I don't throw tantrums. I just, I ask questions. um, so it came from a lot of practice. It came from having difficult times. And then as I got older and more in tune with what was actually happening within my nervous system, I was able to, first of all, regulate myself, and then also help other people regulate themselves too. So when I ask people about, how it feels in their body, for me, marketing and business as a whole, we use so much of our logical brain in order to get things done. And we forget that we have this entire other piece of knowledge that is our body that will inform us whether something is actually right for us or not if we just take the time to listen. So when I do take, I mean, thankfully I've gotten to a place in my career where everybody that I work with, they are a spiritual person, that they have no problem. First of all, like sometimes I'll start sessions with my clients, and we'll start with a meditation because I see that they're too much in things. So I'll drop them back into their bodies with a meditation, because again, the type of marketing that we do, we want to be aligned with who we are on the inside. And so often we
That's
are, again,
amazing, by the way. Can I just say that? I think
it's
that
fun.
I've never heard anyone say that. That's why I wanted to talk to you about marketing, because I to me it's a mindset shift.
Hmm.
Um, because I know you're a brilliant and bad A, because we're on a Breakfast of Champion stage marketer. I know that. I said if anyone came up, we
Yeah.
we could talk about anything with marketing, but like it's so fascinating to me that you would say I'm going to start with meditation first and then we'll get into the marketing. So
Hmm.
that's fascinating to me.
Yeah. And again, I'm like, I have clients now, like, first of all, like I'm a very big fan of being more and more nuanced with who you work with as your career develops. And also like, it's these, like, this is what people come to me for now too. It's like, yes, we want the marketing, we want the logic, we want the tactics, and I want to feel really good about it. So sometimes the best thing you can do, like there's this concept in spirituality that sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is not do anything spiritual. And I think that's the same thing with marketing. Sometimes we get so wrapped up in getting marketing done and getting our views and getting our engagement and getting people down our funnel that we forget to just like take space and chill and let things take their course, and instead of trying to force things, take a step back to readjust and to see, okay, what's maybe not working, or what are my expectations that I need to adjust. So it's not always the logic that needs to be fixed. Sometimes it is, the body itself. And I think that's actually something that I wanted to bring up too. Is like I talked about trauma earlier. A lot of times, like a lot of first time business owners, especially when we're doing something that's our calling, we don't realize that like our values are intrinsically tied to our traumas. They're intrinsically tied to like what we either had a lack of in childhood, or what we had an abundance of in childhood that really made life easier. So when you're in business for yourself and you want to do things from a values way, you have to understand your trauma and be clear on it. And
Mm,
when we're telling people like we're telling people like, hey, you need to be front facing, you need to go there and show yourself, you need to be seen. And for a lot of folks, there's trauma in being seen. Being seen meant you got punished, and being seen meant something bad happened to you. So we're telling people, go out there and put yourself out there. And like we're seeing people put the water in, and then again, trauma response, nervous system will go up. So if you're not
mm,
tending to
mm.
both, there's no way you're going to be able to create a marketing plan that's sustainable to you and tends to your nervous system.
Wow. I mean, that's so interesting for me. No, because I think about when people say they're working themselves to the bone, or
Hmm.
they're overworking and they work to the point of feeling sick to their stomach, of having to lay down, of having a headache, of feeling that anxiety. And it's so interesting to me to think about, maybe it's not just a lack of sleep. It's an unexamined life. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Which is like a um, super powerful. So I feel like you're going to say something. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say there's this saying too. It's like your body will whisper if you let it, but if you don't listen to the whisper, it'll scream. And that's when we see things like disease. This is when we see things that like people will just get incredibly sick and or burn out entirely. And I say this as someone who experienced a pretty bad burnout that took me out for a good like year.
Wow. Well, we're
Yeah.
so glad you're back.
Me too.
Um, oh,
Yeah.
Steph's coming up on stage. Steph is
Yeah.
awesome. Steph, join this conversation. Get on in here. Have you met Anais? Because you two would like just super hit it off.
Good morning, Sarah. Anais. It's awesome to, we say meet you. I think we all just kind of understand what that means. Nice to meet you and so
Absolutely.
happy to hear you on Fireside. This is such, first of all, I think this is such a critically important conversation. And Anais, I have not heard anyone in marketing that has talked about this the way that you do. And here's a couple thoughts that you just sort of evoked for me. I think number one, starting out with a client in a meditative state is really fascinating because number one, it aligns your energy, you and your client. And I think starting out with meditation, prayer, whatever that sort of expression is for you, you're going to have a better marketing campaign because it will automatically be more aligned. Marketing is this is who I am, or this is what my product is. Great marketing is not showing up in a perfect Chanel suit with pearls and a perfect hairdo. Marketing is showing up going, this is me, this is my product, and expressing it in an authentic, value-based way is critical. And it's very hard to do that if you don't align with your client's mission and values. Your marketing campaign is not going to be as successful as it would be if you start out from a place of alignment. And you're also forcing your client into a state of alignment with their own values and their own self. So then before you start talking about what is this going to look like, you are creating space for that alignment, whether they know it or not. And I think that is immensely important. And lastly, the interesting thing about trauma is if you stayed present for the lessons involved in the trauma, I try to approach all the trauma I've had in my life in the past, and then certainly any trauma coming up, because that's just part of life,
Yeah.
is not why is this happening to me, but what is this here to teach me? Because there's big lessons, no matter how hard or painful or personal. And if you can do that, the growth that will happen as a result of showing up brave and vulnerable and willing to view trauma as a teacher is going to expand your capacity as a human exponentially. So those were the two thoughts I had for you, Anais, as I was listening to you. So great to have you here. Sarah, thanks for hosting this conversation. Fantastic.
Thank you so
Absolutely. And
much, Stephanie.
don't go anywhere, Steph, because I just have to take a minute to say that if someone would have told me a year ago that I was going to be on stage with Steph, Anais, and Kim, I wouldn't have even believed them. And so if the three of you don't know each other, and if you all aren't following these three powerhouse, brilliant business leaders, I can't even get over how grateful I am that you all are here today, and to every single person in the room. So we were going to do a marketing Q&A session. If you have a question about your business, come on up here. If not, I'll kind of throw some in a little bit about where we are with marketing. But Anais is an aligned marketer. And so that's really what we've been chatting about this morning. Kim, I'm curious, since you popped on, how do you, take into account your clients' values in marketing and in helping them create the strategies for their business?
Ooh, that is so good. I love that question. I think it's really important to share mine openly as part of my marketing and messaging so that when someone chooses to work with me, they already know what my point of view is. And so as a magnet I'm only going to attract to me magnetic energy that's a right fit. So, for instance, I specifically speak in the face of the hustle and grind 24/7 mentality or the bro marketing that says we're supposed to sacrifice all else to grow our business. I don't believe we were put on the earth to just be one piece, one thing at all. And so I believe that you can have both an empire business and a lifestyle business. And I speak that truth often. And so if someone is of the mindset that like, I'm going to hustle and grind 24/7 and my family's got to understand that, then that they're not going to mess with me. But there are other people who are the right match for them. So then, and also I say, you do not need to believe in the same God that I believe in, but I'm going to talk about him often. So you've got to be comfortable with that. So like certain things I'm super transparent about from the very, very beginning so that people who come into my world know that and they're going to be in line with those values and beliefs. And it's so interesting, this question, even because what's so amazing is the more I have been upfront about my values, the higher value, more successful, ready to go clients I've attracted. Last week, 3 people joined our elite level, which is $40,000. And they came because of the values I put out there, because they want to have more of that balance in their life. So it's amazing. We're scared to do it sometimes, but it's the absolute thing we need to do a lot of the times to get our business to grow.
I love it. Anais, tell me what you think of that answer, of those sentiments.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I mean, it's also like from a marketing perspective, again, a lot of times we like the traditional marketing, we think about it in the sense of like everything to get the bottom line in, right? That's the marketing we get brought up in. That's the marketing that we see every day. And one thing about when you're creating your values and you're putting that up front and center and you're embodying them too, is that it creates a two-way filtration system, right? The people that are coming through the customer journey are very clear of like, yes, this is for me, or no, this is not for me. And the opposite is also true. If someone comes along, like you get to make the decision as to like, wait, this is not at all aligned with my values, or yes, it is. And again, it's like taking the blinders off of what entrepreneurship is, of just profit, and allowing it to expand into like, is this sustainable? And is this feeding into the life and the lifestyle that I actually want and that I desire to bring forward?
Anais, I have a follow-up question for you and for Kim and Stephanie. Please thoughts on this as well. I think, you know, I imagine that there might be some people in the room who, because I think we all hit those times when we question ourselves, but it's harder when it's a value that we hold sacred. And it's harder when someone's saying that doesn't belong in business. What are you doing? What are you thinking? Why are you holding on to that value when you could just go out there and appeal to everyone and be a bajillionaire? And I'm like curious almost the encouragement that you would give to that person who maybe um, is feeling like they're being told that living into their values means that they're not going to be able to successfully market or hit a certain level or hit a certain echelon because they're so values driven. Because we do have to fight back against that messaging. Like, as Kim was saying, fight back up against that whole hustle culture. I think you also have to fight back sometimes that there's no place for values in business, and business should just be like palatable for everyone. It should be bland. It should just appeal to everyone. It should be, you know what I mean? So I'd love to hear
Yeah.
kind of your thoughts on that.
Well, there's two things. One is a saying that was said to me a lot in my first, decade of being an entrepreneur, which is like, it's not personal, it's just business. And I think that's just such BS. It's such BS. I think that if you have to put your values to the side in order to have a profitable business, you need to kind of rethink your life, because that's not a way that I want to live. Like, again, like when you create so much misalignment, like it's gonna be paid for somewhere, whether it's in your relationships, whether it's in within yourself, and like again, disease and things like that. Like you can't just live like constantly battling against things that you hold near and dear to your heart and be okay in the long run. Like it's just not sustainable. And I mean, for me, like I think it's very much an idea of like, you have to pick your lane. Like I don't need to convince everybody that living this way is better. Like that's not my role in life, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with people like finding their own way. I'm okay with just planting the seed. I'm okay with people like telling me like, oh, you're never gonna succeed. It's like, okay, I already am, but okay, sure. Like I don't need to convince people. And also, like, all for me, the people who are drawn to this are the people who know that this is like a truth for them. and they know that it's a possibility, and they know it's a desire for them too. So I think, like, yeah, of course, I think it's really easy. There's so much stuff out there that's like, okay, you want to make a quick buck, here's how you do drop shipping, here's how you do this. Like, there's so many things that you can do to make a quick dollar if you're into exploiting yourself, if you're into working hours that aren't sustainable for you, if you're into harming planet people at the
If you're
benefit
into
of your.
harming the planet and people,
Yeah,
that's your
look, and some
thing.
people are okay with that, and frankly, we're
But
all
but
okay
I
with that
love,
to some
honestly,
degree.
Anais, I love how comfortably you say that, because to your point, I think that it is pushing back against the traditional narrative
Mhm.
of this is the way things have always been done. You know what I mean? Well, this is the bottom line. This is the tactics. This is the, and when you kind of make light of it in some ways and how you frame it out on the other side, not make light of it, but you know what I mean? When you kind of point out
Yeah.
how it is not entrenched, I think that's really powerful.
Well, it's also like I have to, when I say these things, I have to reckon with the fact that there's choices that I make that do harm people. There's choices that I make that does harm the planet. Like, I still shop at Amazon. Like, that is not helpful to people or planet. That is not helpful, rather, to people or planet for the long, like, for a lot of things. So it's like, I say these things while also like examining myself and the choices that we're making. But when we're able to examine the choices that we're making, at least we have the awareness of it. Right. So like, I know eventually, like, I would like to move away from shopping at Amazon altogether. And right now that's not where I'm at in my life. Right. But it's knowing what my values are and knowing that, like, I want to take steps and seeing where I can take steps. And marketing to me is a no brainer, because it's what we were saying earlier. Like, the more I can be authentic to me, the more I can be aligned and be proud of who I am, the more people that are coming to me that are just like, a heck yes, I'm in, like, whatever, like,
Yeah.
I want to work with you. And I mean, it's what Kim was saying earlier. It's like, when you can really own who you are, and I hate using the word own because I really don't believe it, but when you can embody the fullness of who you are. Like, it's actually, let's give it a marketing concept, right? So usually in marketing, you have this product or service that you're selling, and there's someone that needs this product or service, right? But if you expand what you're talking about beyond just the product, beyond just what it does, what you can use it for, the longevity, the sustainability, the customer service behind it, if you go and you expand to the values, suddenly the amount of people that can relate to that product expands. So they
Mm.
might need this product, but they really want a product that's actually, created from biodegradable materials, right? You suddenly expand how much people can connect with that product or service, because you are sharing more of yourself and more about what the values are that went into creating the product or service, and more about the why. So you're creating more points of connection strictly from the marketing sense. And for you as a human, right? Like, if you're the one who's, a small business owner, you have limited time and resources, would you rather spend more time tending to clients who know who you are and who are a yes to it, or trying to convince people that, like, your process is the process and that they should trust you?
You know what I love about that is that we act like leaning into our values is niching down, but you just explained how it's expansive.
I have bought products from companies that I did not need because I wanted to support them.
I've done
You
that.
know, yeah.
I think whether
Oh,
on the small scale from like Girl Scout cookies, just because you want to support your neighbor's child's entrepreneurial
uh-huh.
spirit, to that's amazing, because so often, wow, that was good. That was good, Anais.
Thanks. But also, like, think about it. Even if you don't want to, buy the Girl Scout cookies, you'll promote it. So, like, I have a ton of people
I
who,
will buy some Thin Mints. I will buy
listen.
some Thin Mints.
I have no doubt. But let's say there was a product, right? Like, there was a product that like, you want to support the company, you might not
Right.
need the product, or you might not be spending on stuff that you don't need at the moment. You would still promote it. Or if people are talking about this, like, you would go and be a ambassador for them because you align with their values, even if you're not the one who needs the product.
And here's the thing, it's so interesting what you're saying too, because I think too often we admit almost like the opposite or the negative side of
Mhm.
things without admitting the positive. And what I mean by that is that as soon as the brand falls short of values that we align with, we're done.
Mhm.
But we don't acknowledge that alignment with their brand values is why we stay tried and true in the first place, right? So, like, we've seen it. We've
Mhm.
seen when a public facing member of an organization says or does something that we're like, I can't support that brand anymore. Or we've seen brands drop influencers because they're like, this isn't
Yeah.
aligned with what we want to put out there. And it's so fascinating that we'll lean into that negative, but we won't think about it on the flip side. So do the opposite of that. Talk about what you're doing that's going to make everyone say, I want to buy from you.
Yeah. And I think it's actually like talking about like kind of cancel culture. Like I believe that cancel culture is actually another form of supremacy culture, frankly, because we are humans. We are meant to make mistakes. We are meant to learn. We're meant to repair. And I think that if the more you can lean into your values from the get-go, the more you actually have grace should you do something or should you make a misstep. Right? Because if you're super into your values and people know you for your values and you say something that like either like, I mean, you say something or you do something that isn't quite embodied, yes, you'll be called out. And the people who have been with you for your values will give you more grace knowing what your values actually are and give you space to come back.
Anais, that's so good. So first of all, I always say about cancel culture, I don't believe in it because a person is not a magazine, so you can't
No.
cancel them. It's not a magazine subscription. It's impossible.
Impossible.
But it's very interesting to me that you're aligning it with supremacy because, again, thinking of marketing, I think the reason why cancel culture has stuck around so long is not just because of that kind of voyeurism around like, oh, how the mighty will fall, but I think that it's because the people taking down the public figure, have for themselves branded that it's accountability, have for themselves branded that it's justice, not that it's a form of supremacy to say, I want to like eradicate someone from the planet because they made a mistake. Now, here's where I'm gonna push you a little
Yeah.
bit.
I love it. I love it when you
Okay.
push me, Sarah.
Is it supremacy culture when we're canceling a supremacist? You feel me?
Is it supremacy culture? Yeah. There's a saying. I believe it's. Gosh, I'm so bad with names. But there's this. I'm gonna. I'm. Gosh, I'm gonna really regret forgetting who said this quote. There's this quote that says, "You cannot take down the master's house using the master's tools." So if we want to dismantle things like supremacy culture, we cannot use supremacy culture.
Dang, that's
I have
good.
to find who said that quote because it's definitely not mine.
I absolutely, I know that quote too. Yeah, that was powerful. And golly. First of all, I love how because it's us, we are now fully into social activism. If you have marketing questions, raise your hand and
Yeah.
come to the stage.
And look, I will
But in
also
all
say-
seriousness, no, but in all seriousness, here's the thing. Oh my God, I'm shouting in this coffee shop.
I love it.
In all
Tell them,
seriousness,
Sarah.
I
Tell
get
them.
animated. I get excited. They just cleared
Yeah.
their throats. Maybe I should be a little. Um, in all seriousness, though, it is all threaded together. And so to me, it comes back to what we're talking about with aligned marketing. Is that it is all threaded together. This to me is a more meaningful and a more impactful conversation than the stereotypical, which by the way, guys, real marketers don't sit around and talk about logos all day long. Like that's boring. But like, this is more interesting and I hope
Yeah.
more valuable, which isn't to say if you have a logo question, come on up, we'll troubleshoot your logo. We can do that. Right.
And also, let's troubleshoot your mindset.
But right, why person empowered at Gap did you pick that logo and make the biggest logo gaffe of all time? Not canceling you, but just saying, you know what I mean? But to your point, Anais, it actually reminds me, we're going to get really ditzy for a minute. It reminds me of a time when I went to get my hair cut and I wanted like a drastic change. I had like extremely long hair with blonde highlights. I was 20 and I went to my hairstylist and I was like, chop it off, dye it dark. And she was like, is everything okay? She was like, for real, like, is there anything we need to talk about? And I'm mentioning this because I actually think that's analogous in a lot of situations. Like if someone comes to you and is like, throw the old marketing plan out the window. Like sometimes you need to be like, what happened? Like sometimes I'll say to my clients, like, what did someone say to either what's inspiring or what did someone say to you? You know what I mean? Like if it's really good and solid with what they're saying, I'll probably start with like, this is amazing. What's inspire you? Let's talk through it. And if it sounds less inspired, like maybe it's coming from a place of fear, maybe it's coming from a scarcity mindset, maybe someone told them that they were stupid to be doing what they were doing, having the discussion of like, I would love to hear where this is coming from, pulling the threads that maybe you can pull through to their marketing campaigns, but also, as you're saying, kind of assuaging those fears that, because you don't want fear driven marketing. And that's another thing that I think is really special about living into your values is that that's almost like the cure all for, I think, fear driven marketing, perhaps. What do you think?
I agree. No, I definitely agree. Because I mean, to me, like fear-based marketing to me is like thinking that you need to show up 24/7 in order to be able to have a sustainable business. Fear-based marketing to me is thinking that you have to manipulate people into saying yes to what you're offering, right? Like it's all those things that
Fear-based
is
marketing is if my competitor does this and I'm not spending as much as them on Facebook ads, or I don't have the exact same number of emails in my funnel, or I am not popping on TikTok,
it's
I'm not going to have a
comparison. Yeah.
successful business.
Fear-based marketing is comparison. Fear-based marketing is stealing or trying to mimic other people's campaigns rather
Mhm.
than coming up with your own. It's, I mean, even I'll say, like, if we want to take it down to basics, like fear-based marketing is buying these templates of like, here's your next 30 days of Instagram
Instagram
posts.
captions.
Like, yes to
And
guidelines.
it's interesting to me
Yeah.
too. I think fear-based marketing to me, it's the person who's running the race and starts looking backwards and it slows them down.
Mm, yeah, I could see that. It's also like it's people who are afraid to show up. Again, like if we're trying to get back to trauma, it's people who are afraid to show who they really are because they've been shown that it's not safe to be who they really are.
Yeah. It's
So it's safer
interesting.
to be someone else.
You're so right. And it's interesting. I was just having this discussion with someone the other day, that we all share the same stories of the
Hmm.
innovators who were called crazy
Yep.
and told they didn't know what they were doing. And later on, they're seen as luminaries. But for the people who are in it, it never feels that way when you're in it. When you're in it, it just feels isolating, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I will also say, like, it is incredibly isolating to be like embodied in your values. Like, it is not something that is praised in our society. And I think it is something that's shifting and changing. And I think the pandemic really accelerated that because we had to dive into our values to see like, okay, where is our level of comfort and exploitation? Where is our level of comfort in harming others? So I think that brought a lot of things forward. But or rather, and being really, really values based can be incredibly isolating for a few different reasons, right? Some people might like now I have found my crew of people, but it took some shedding too because there's some people who want to stay in their reality where it's okay to manipulate folks into buying, programs that they don't need. Like some people want to stay that because their profit is more important and that is their value. Like they don't want to
Mm,
admit to themselves that their only value is or their main value is profit. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like to me, it's
right.
whatever's right for you is right for you. And also, like I feel like as an entrepreneur, it can be an incredibly isolating experience. Like you said, like there are people who will question you, that will throw doubt, that will not understand you. I mean, look, my dad's a lifelong entrepreneur. He's still like he saw that on my Instagram. I have Marketing Mystic, and he called me. He's like, "You need to take that down." I'm like, why? He's like, oh, because companies aren't going to hire you. I'm like, great. I don't want to work with those companies. He's like, no, but you're leaving money on the table. I'm like, no, I don't want that money. And there's still like with my father who like helped raise me, like there's still this incongruence
Yeah.
sometimes with the people that are closest to you. And you just have to be okay with that. And this is where
Yeah.
I actually think that like my upbringing, my trauma helped empower me is that like I know what it's like. Like I went no contact with my family for a decent amount of time. Like I've done the thing solo that I trust that no matter what, I'm good and I've got me. So when it comes to like being isolated from everybody else, like I'm cool with it. And also like that's not an easy thing to come to. And I don't think that you need trauma to come to that decision. At the end of the
Hmm.
day, we're all here because we're all here, we're all breathing because we've got us at the end of the day, right? Like we've gotten this
Yeah.
far. So when we can start to build that relationship with ourselves that like I'm good, I can trust myself, that I can figure it out no matter what, then you start to be a little bit more confident in what you're okay with sharing. You start to be a little bit more confident, like, you know what, I can talk about this. This is fine. I'm okay. I got me.
Yeah.
And that's I think where the confidence also comes up, and that's also why I think we need to hold people's hands rather than telling them do the most, be on TikTok, be on Facebook, be on Instagram, have your email funnel, have your this, have your that. I think it's much more effective to hold someone's hand, being like, okay, what are you comfortable trying first? And then building that confidence step by step, that they can fully step into their authenticity, they can fully step into their values, because you can't expect someone to make this change. And like, we grew up in a capitalistic, patriarchal society. To expect someone to be a total abolitionist, overnight is just not. It's not reality. And I don't identify as a total abolitionist either. Like, I live in a capitalist system. I charge money for things. Like,
Yeah.
you can
Well,
want
and here's the thing, that's
to.
an important, I actually think it's a really important distinction for people, is that you're not, out here living off the land, which it would be beautiful if you were. But it's important for people to know that it's not either or. It's not you're leaving money on the table so you won't be a successful business person. It's a different definition of success. Um, I do have a question for you based on something you were just
Mhm.
saying. So I know that you just said you don't define yourself as an abolitionist. Are you comfortable with the term activist? Do you feel, does that, or do you not like that label? Does that feel comfortable for
How
you?
can you define that label for me?
Okay, how about I say I personally identify you as someone who is an educator and passionate
Mhm.
about certain social issues publicly.
Yeah,
Do you feel comfortable
I
with
would.
that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So a question I have for you, and it does kind of go back to this cancel culture and everything else. I am curious because you leaned into some topics that people are very split on in this environment right now.
Mhm.
I am curious if I guess a three-part question, if it had
Yeah.
business ramifications, if you cared if it had business ramifications, and then thirdly, if just the question was raised, how you navigated that. Because I want to hearten someone who's watching
Yeah.
this back later, who like has maybe strongly held, social views or opinions, but has a fear of sharing them of what happens next. Like, could you share a little bit about that journey as a business owner and sharing that so openly?
Okay, so can you reframe the question for me? You had three part. So what's the
It's a
question?
massive question. I guess here's the thing. So if you go out there with a viewpoint that maybe half the world
Okay.
disagrees with,
Yeah.
um, just share that journey as a business
Yeah.
owner.
I mean, so I think if we're going to look at it from the frame of marketing, right? There's a customer journey, and I believe that as a business owner, especially if you're a front-facing business owner, you have to be really clear with yourself what your boundaries are as far as what you're willing to share with people, your customers specifically, depending on where they're at with their journey. So people who are, for example, at the top part of my funnel, who have just been introduced to me, I am comfortable saying that I grew up in a family dynamic that wasn't easy. I'm comfortable talking about some level of trauma. I'm comfortable talking about my business experiences that were also pretty traumatic. I'm comfortable talking about even like, my divorce. Like, there's a lot of things that I'm comfortable, and comfortable talking about my spirituality that I lead people to. Like, there's a lot of things that I'm comfortable with. And as people move through this customer journey, I have my boundaries obviously shift because we're relating on a deeper level. So I'll be more comfortable sharing specific things as people get to know me more. And it's just like regular human relationships that don't have a dollar attached to them. Like, it's
Right.
relating. So as far as like navigating a polarizing opinion, I think at the end of the day, it has to come back to what are your values. So something that like related to me specifically is the Israel Palestine like conflict that happened in May, and that's actually still ongoing. And I had to really sit with, and I'm Jewish, so I should probably mention that. So I had to sit with, where do I like, I know how my nervous system was reacting, because I was definitely in like not a good place for a very long time. And also I had to sit with, how do I want to approach this in a way that is incredibly linked with my values, because I'm not about spreading misinformation. I am a person who is very intentional with the words that I try to use. So I
Mm-hmm.
really had to, it took me a minute to find what my pathway was specifically in that situation. And what I leaned into, what I landed on, which felt really, really good, was education. And it was education about Judaism. It was education about, like, hey, we make up 1.8% of the US population. And a lot of folks have never met a Jewish person, have or had only met one or two Jewish people and didn't have a great experience. So like, they have a very isolating way of thinking about this, and that's coloring their biases, frankly. So for me, I went into education mode, and I lost followers. 100%. I lost followers. I didn't lose any clients because, again, like when you're upfront about your values and the way that you speak about things is values based, you have grace. So it also, like, I was able to have really interesting
Did you have any
conversations.
clients like approach you with questions?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had a ton of people who approached me with questions. Even people that I didn't know. I had a ton of strangers in my DMs approaching me with questions. And to me, it was like there were some people that didn't have questions that just wanted to come and like throw hate my way, which was like, fine, you can just block them and move on. And then there were others who were open to a conversation and open to a dialogue, and we had one.
Yeah.
So it's, to me, like, it's when it comes to sharing like your beliefs when it might be polarizing. I think it's first being really clear, and it's helpful to actually do that exercise. Like, have your customer journey laid out. Like, write down, this is what I'm comfortable sharing at this stage. This is what I'm comfortable sharing at this stage. This is what I'm comfortable sharing here. And you can be really clear for yourself. And then when there's things that happen like this that can be traumatizing and that you feel like you have to take a stand, I like take a step back, first of all, because anytime that you are, again, it goes into fear-based marketing. Anytime
Right.
you're reacting from a trauma response, you are not actually tending to your values.
And here's the
And
thing too, it's interesting, forgive me for interrupting you for 1 second.
yeah, no, please.
It's interesting to me that you brought up that fear-based reaction, because I know for me, like one of the reasons why I don't maybe step as forward into the discussion as you do, not only because I'm not as educated as you are, but I'm Jewish, but I went to Episcopal school. Like I
Mm-hmm.
always felt like very othered. And so I'm like, why would I want to be like out there with my otherness, which is it's totally a fear-based, like, I'm like, oh, this isn't, why would I talk about this when I'm talking about work? And even if it's something that's insignificant to me, I have family over there. Why would I be talking about this right now? It's irrelevant. It's over here. That's a
Mm-hmm.
learned behavior.
It's also, I mean, look, I part of why my parents immigrated to the US is that they wanted us to assimilate because, I mean, Jews in Tunisia were kicked out after the Six-Day War. My grandmother is a survivor of the Holocaust in France. Like, there was a desire for us to separate a little bit from Judaism when we moved here. Like, that was the intention of us to be more assimilated. So it's like, I like a lot of the education that you saw me post was education that I had ideas of, but I was doing in real time.
It's
Like, I
amazing.
spent hours doing
I can
research.
only
Yeah.
imagine. You were such a resource.
Yeah, it was, I mean, and for me, it was a huge, like, it was a learning opportunity for me too, because like I knew, and I think when things like that happen, you have to be open to questioning your identities and your biases as well.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's not just about finding resources that prove your point. It's not just about finding ways that you're right. It's also about looking at ways that you're wrong and looking at ways where there might be nuance that you didn't previously understand,
And
and being open to, like, you have to know that your identities are flexible.
mhm. Here's what, by the way, is super
Mm-hmm.
interesting from a marketing perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Super, super interesting on this topic. Ben and Jerry's.
Oh
So when
yeah.
you say like do your research and know what you're talking about, up until the conflict, I would
Mm-hmm.
always highlight Ben and Jerry's
Same.
as a brand that understood social good. I mean, they they lived into their values. And then when I saw their statement around the Israel-Palestine conflict, I was like, these people didn't do their research. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and there were actually so many thought leaders who I was almost like, and brands that would just throw up a statement that said, I support Palestine. And I'm like, did you research this? Like,
Yeah.
who's on your team? And it's everything that we were talking about earlier that I think, and it's so interesting actually, Donna Bowling had done a stage around that time where she asked about polarizing opinions and whether or not you should be polarizing in a personal brand. I actually talked to her on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember saying, I think that two things are really important that you, if you're going to step into a topic, that you believe wholeheartedly in what you're saying and it's important to you, and that you know what the heck you're talking about. And if
I
either
would.
one of those things are missing, it's
Mm-hmm.
problematic, in my opinion.
Well, I also think, I mean, this is where the human relating, I think, to me comes into play, is that, like, I'm open to being wrong. Like, and that's something that, like, I don't think that any one human can step into, like, I mean, even like if we were just to look at it as relationships, right? Because marketing is all about relationships, right? It's about you,
Yeah.
like, telling people, hey, this is who I am, this is what I have. Would you like to come participate in it? And other people saying yes or no, thank you, or maybe later, right? Like it's at the end of the day, we're still humans connecting to humans. And I think one of the things that actually, and it was this conflict that really opened me up to it, is that there is a lot of gray area. And yeah, Ben and Jerry's was one that I pointed to. Like I have so many different presentations that I would point like Ben and Jerry's, like here's an ice cream company that talks about defunding the police, that talks about everything else, that talks about a lot of US based things, and now Israel apparently, which, I have opinions about. But it's just like one of those things that to me that wasn't congruent, because they totally shifted what they're open to talking about versus, just for Israel, which inherently, so part of, for folks who don't know, part of the definition of anti-Semitism is when you apply one set of standards to the only Jewish country, then you apply it everywhere else in the world. So to me, it would have been one thing if Ben and Jerry's had been using their platform to call out like the concentration camps that are happening in China right now, or even the Palestinian deaths that are happening in, I want to say Iraq, that there's been like thousands. I mean, there's so many different things that Ben and Jerry's could have pointed to instead of just pointing to the only Israel country in the world. So to me, that was an incongruence.
I couldn't agree with you more.
So
and to your point too, really, and forgive me, I'm just so hype about this conversation with you, Anais. I'm sorry. Terrible. I'm interrupting.
I love it.
I'm glad. You're like, she's terrible. She's interrupting me. Here's the other thing too, where you hit the nail on the head with what you just said, which is that I don't think that picking and choosing, at least to me, that to me is actually someone who needs to go back to that alignment, to that values work in their marketing so that it doesn't seem performative.
Yeah. So that's the other question, is like when you are going to take a stance, is it just for the likes? Is it just for the social media? Is it just because everybody else? I mean, we saw it with the BLM movement. How many people threw up the black square with right writing that like, oh, we stand with the black folks of America, when they were having oppressive systems in their own businesses, right? So really like check with yourself, like, why am I doing this? And because I have a lot of clients that call me when there's always these conflicts. Like I have clients or friends that call me like, okay, do I say something? And my first question is always like, do you want to say something? And so many times people are like, no, not really. I'm like, okay, then don't. Like, why? Like, we're not, again, supremacy culture at work. Just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean you have to like twist yourself into belonging to that group. So, and then if the answer is yes, I do want to say something, like this is heavy in my heart. This is like, I want people to know, like, I want people to know where I stand. Okay, great. Where do you stand? Let's talk it out. Like let's have the conversation. Like, okay, well, I'm a yes to this. I'm a no to that. Like, okay, well, what about this? Are you a yes to this nuance? And how are you embodying that? Like, what in your business says that your values are actually aligned with that, right? Like, I feel like the NFL is an easy like brand to point to because they put out this whole statement. Meanwhile, 2 years ago, they were finding Kaepernick or Kaepernick. God, I always say his name wrong. Like, so it's where is, like, yes, say a statement after you've examined what your business practices are.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful because just like we were talking before, I think around how problematic fear-based marketing is. I think so is, as you were saying before, like as we were saying, performative marketing for the likes, marketing where people know that your heart is in it. It's not actually aligned with your business. Like it's not actually what you do. When everyone hops on, like I will tell you a pet peeve of mine is whenever there's a day and businesses that don't give a what about whatever it is all post the things. So like on Earth Day, everyone posts a globe, but it's like they haven't done anything for the environment.
It's like you're killing
on Martin Luther King Jr. Jr. Day, they post a Martin Luther King Jr. quote, but it's in their colors. And it's like, so let's say that it's like in like Etsy pink, and it's like, but actually, you know what? Let's be fair, because I want this to be an educational hour. Let's explain to the people in the room who are doing that so well-meaning. They're like, I want to acknowledge Martin Luther King Jr. I think he did something for this company. I've been told by something that everything on my grid should be uniform. Let's elaborate on why maybe that's a little bit out of alignment, and not laugh about it, not as marketers, not judge it, but say like, why, what is a better option for someone who's like, I care about the earth. What should I do on Earth Day?
So, I mean, that's, I think, I feel like we should workshop this with someone because it's a lot easier to have an actual case study, right? So like, what should you do on Earth Day? I don't know. Like, again, like look at your practices first and then decide what you want to do. It's like, okay, I want to celebrate Earth Day. Okay, how do you want to celebrate Earth Day? I want to put a post on. It's like, is that really celebrating Earth Day? Is there an action you can take rather than just putting up, a pretty aesthetic that would be more meaningful and that would be like an actual like celebration of Earth Day, right?
Right. Like,
So I
what if
think,
you planted trees in your community and did a story about it? Like, that would be powerful. And how much more
or if
powerful would
you
that be for you and for your community?
Yeah. Or even if you did a whole promotion, like with every purchase, I'm planting a tree, or with everything, I'm doing this. Or you know what? For the next year, I'm buying carbon offsets with everything. So everything that you're buying from me is carbon neutral. Like there's so many different things that you can do if you just take the time to take it a step further. Right. So even with the MLK quotes, like, okay, I want to honor MLK. Okay. You want to post a quote. What else? What else can you do? Okay, you can donate funds. You can uplift, people that are actually embodying MLK's values, right? You can do so many things beyond just putting up a print. And by the way, I'm a yes to aesthetic. Like it doesn't bother me that like people are going to put it in their colors. I just want it to be. It's again, it goes back to that performative action. I just wanted to take it a step further, right? And ask yourself, is there a better way for me to actually embody this rather than just showing it?
I love that. I think that that is an incredible, incredible note. I do want to ask Niku, who I pulled up on stage. I think it's her
Yeah.
first time on the app. Niku has a background in marketing as well. She's one of our mods. Niku, did you want to pipe in, or are you just playing around with Fireside right now? Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, I'm totally trying to figure out what this app is all about, but I'm loving this conversation.
Well, we're excited that you are learning alongside us. Anais, I want to give you the final word on this. We didn't get to workshop, so I'm going to have to bring you back as the show grows and we get some people up here to like actually workshop questions. But this was almost like cathartic for me, as it always is when I have the opportunity to hang out and drink coffee with you for an hour. So I just like to build that in. We'll figure that out. But I really think if there's one thing that you could leave, not only everyone in the room, but we're so grateful you are here and you joined us today, Susan and James and Angie and Kim and Kinter and Debbie and everyone who I said good morning to earlier. We're so grateful you're here. But like, if you could leave everyone who's maybe watching on YouTube later or finds the link with, what is one thing that they can do in 2022 that will help them move the needle forward in an aligned way? Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
I always like look off when I think too, so I wasn't even looking at this little monkey telling me you're muted. So I think it's just that. It's like when you feel like you're like, I feel like inspired action is something that a lot of folks feel too, especially when they're doing spirit-led work. So it's like, oh, I really want to do this. And to me, it's just give yourself the space to ask yourself why, and give yourself the space to, well, I guess, okay, if there was really one thing, let me take it back. Like, know what your values are. That would be the one thing that will really create so much clarity. And by the way, knowing what your values are is not like a 1 hour thing. Like I think it was 14 hours with one client just moving through their values and really getting into the nitty gritty of what that is, of what they are and why they're important. So I think if there was one thing that would really help everything moving forward, and not just for this year, but in life, is get really, really clear on your values and why they're so important to you and why you want to bring into the world and what impact that they can make. And then from there, I think it's a game changer, because then you can basically test everything against it. Like, oh, I want to post something. Like, all right, how do I post something about this while embodying these values? How do I do this in a way that's a yes to me? And I think that'll move the needle forward.
I love that so much. I do want to also, I realized one more thing, even though I said one more thing. I want you to tell everyone where they can find you. I know you have some amazing free downloads. I want them when they're like, Anais, she's amazing. Like the first time Glenn ever heard you speak, he was like, where did you come from? So everyone who's having that experience, I want them to know where to find you.
Yeah, I mean, Instagram is one of my main channels. And also, I will say that I practice what I preach. So I definitely took a month off in December for my birth month. So Instagram is basically the best way. It's just my first name, last name, Anais Ganouna, which I know everybody knows how to spell off the top of their head. It's in my profile on Fireside. And then from there, I have links to everything. I have links also, by the way, to some of the podcasts. that we put together from Breakfast with Champions. So if you do want to hear some of the prior segments, they are available in the link in my bio. There's a free aligned marketing audit on there. And you know what I think would be really fun too for folks that want like a fun, easy thing. There's a quiz, there's an assessment in the link of my bio that is what type of visionary you are. It'll take you 10 to 15 minutes, and it comes with like the assessment's really, we spend 4 months on it. So the assessment's amazing. You'll go through, there's a lot of stuff about your skills, maybe what your weaknesses are, where you could use some improvement, your challenges. And there's an actual, there's a guided practice with every single type. So there's a meditation, there's a writing exercise, there's all these different things. So that might be,
and that's free?
That might be of interest to folks. Yeah, that's free.
What? Wow.
Yeah. It's what type of visionary are you? Is the name of it. The link is in my bio. It's a lot of fun. I'm an architect visionary, which means I like to take people and build steps.
I need to do that. If I do that, can I Zoom you and talk to you about my results?
Absolutely. Well, I'm a data nerd. I'll get the whole data. I'll see all the information.
You'll see my life story.
I can look it up. I don't look at it automatically, but for you, I will.
Anais, I am so grateful that you spent this hour with me this morning. This was the perfect start to my week. You have such a heart of service. You're constantly helping me behind the scenes at Breakfast with Champions with anything in my life. Yeah, clap it up if you enjoyed the session this morning. Clap it up for Anais. If you're excited that you got to meet her, if you learned something today. I'm so, you see all this applause? Oh, you get enough applause. It plays a little jam.
Love it.
I'm so grateful that you're hanging out with me on Fireside this morning. I just learned so much from you always, and I just love you dearly. And I hope that this conversation makes it to the people who need to hear it. That's my hope.
Oh, I know it will. And even the people who aren't ready to hear it, I know it'll just plant the seed for when they're ready.
Well, listen, thank you so much. I'm going to pull the weight bot back up, and we'll shut her down for now. But you guys can catch Anais at Breakfast with Champions. You can catch her on her Instagram. Follow her. She's a rock star. Every single person who is on this stage and in this room is a rock star, and I'm grateful for each and every one of you.
Sarah, wait 1 second. Monday. You have a question in the chat. I have a question in the chat. So if you look above, I think is it Niku? I want to make sure I'm pronouncing her name right. It says, where do we
Niku.
find your bio?
Anais, do you have a bio on here?
I thought I did. I think if you click on my face. Oh, but okay, well, the way you spell my name is on there. I don't think I linked. Can I add my Instagram on here?
I don't know. Do you know, we will troubleshoot Anais's profile after the show. But Niku, actually, so this is cool. I actually have the phone numbers of everyone on stage in my phone. So if y'all need to connect, we can, and Instagram profiles, I can hook y'all up because you all are brilliant people. So,
yes, please.
All right, let's do it. You all are awesome. And now I'm going to pull up the weight bot. Thank you, Steph. Steph always has my back on Fireside.